In the year 1987, in the Kursk region's Oboyansky district, lies the Pashechny State Farm. What once were thriving orchards and homestead plots are now more frequently weekend getaways rather than productive agricultural lands. The allure of working the land no longer captivates the youth, and adults find themselves short on time and energy. Many urban students and school children only have a theoretical understanding of where their fruits and vegetables come from, encountering them in stores or salads. In Soviet times, everyone was familiar with the toil of working on garden beds. As soon as the academic year commenced in schools, technical institutes, and universities, students were often sent to collective farms. Their task? Harvesting potatoes, beets, apples, whatever had grown. It was convenient, a free and importantly abundant labor force, eager to dig into black soil rather than attend classes. However, in September 1987, a routine apple-picking trip turned into a nightmare for students from Kursk. During a lunch break, a group of first-year students ventured into an orchard to set up a picnic. Just meters away from a clearing, one student noticed a red object on a branch. Rushing to pluck what he thought was an apple, he froze a few steps later. Lying in the grass was a mutilated human body, and the apple was actually a piece of bloodied flesh. The horrifying discovery was immediately reported to the police. An operational team arrived at the scene. In a forest plantation near a highway, they found the brutally disfigured body of a woman. Her abdomen had been cut open, and her entrails were scattered on tree branches and grass within a 3-meter radius. Initial forensic examination suggested, later confirmed by autopsy, that the unfortunate woman had been raped post-mortem. The sheer brutality suggested an animalistic perpetrator. But what had she done to deserve such a gruesome end? Inspector Yevgeny Malikin, part of the investigative team on site, found the victim's face familiar. It turned out to be Lydia Alexeyeva, a woman previously convicted 3 times, a known alcohol enthusiast who had given birth twice in prison and was stripped of her parental rights. Lydia Alexeyeva, 35, had been penalized for apartment thefts. Recently, she had decided to abandon her criminal past, cohabiting with a man and giving birth to another child. Nevertheless, villagers justifiably described Alexeyeva as a woman of easy virtue. Was it revenge from old criminal acquaintances, jealous retribution, or had a sexual maniac emerged in the area? The investigation of the heinous murder was assigned to a young investigator, Nikolai Vagin. Despite his youth, Nikolai quickly earned the respect of his fellow investigators. He was wholly dedicated to his work, sparing neither time nor effort. A graduate from one of the USSR's top law schools, Nikolai Vagin brought modern forensic techniques to the Kursk detectives' arsenal. He studied and actively applied psychology in practice. At the prosecutor's office, there was a jest. If a suspect didn't confess to Vagin, they were definitely innocent. Yet, on that dreadful day, neither the talented investigator nor anyone else could have imagined that Lydia Alexeyeva's bloody murder would be linked to the sudden disappearance of a kindergarten teacher. Galya Kolosova, after finishing school, decided to enroll in a pedagogical college due to her love for children. Her boundless kindness, care, and compassion were evident from childhood. Upon graduating, Galya got a job at a kindergarten in the village of Maysky, 12 kilometers from her home. At times, she stayed overnight at the kindergarten as traveling back to Oboyan was far. Eventually, she was allocated a small living space on the 2nd Street. In Maysky, Galya met Mikhail, who was captivated by her modest beauty. Their relationship quickly blossomed, and soon Mikhail proposed. The wedding was scheduled for mid-September. On the day in question, Galya had asked for time off to visit her mother and help with wedding preparations. Despite the bad weather and rain, her colleagues at the kindergarten tried to dissuade her from leaving, but fate had other plans. The next morning, Galya did not show up for work, nor did she appear the following day. When colleagues called her home and learned she hadn't stayed the night, they realized something was amiss. Rumors of a nearby murder had already circulated within the kindergarten. The investigation into Lydia Alexeyeva's monstrous murder continued. No witnesses were found, and questioning her acquaintances yielded no results. However, investigator Nikolai Vagin was intrigued by a peculiar incident reported the day before. The district police received a report that on the Moscow-Kharkov highway, the driver of a Zaporozhets car had hit a woman and attempted to flee the scene. In 1987, an unknown caller contacted the local police with a chilling story. He recounted driving his car when he came across a red Zaporozhets on the roadside, its hazard lights blinking. Nearby, a man appeared to be dragging a bloodied woman away from the road. When the police arrived at the scene, they found nothing. No blood, no broken glass. After checking hospitals and morgues with no results, the investigation was dropped. It's easy to criticize the police response as neglectful, but consider the context. It was 1987, the era of perestroika, glasnost, and reform. Also saw a flood of anonymous tip-offs across the Soviet Union. People were denounced for everything from infidelity to political criticism, often leading to job loss or imprisonment. In this climate, the police likely dismissed the call as just another false report. Fast forward to when investigator Nikolai Vagin learned about the murder and subsequent rape of Lydia Alexeyeva. The case involved a red Zaporozhets, a detail that sent chills down Vagin's spine as it matched the signature of a notorious serial killer from Belarus. Rumors of the gruesome crime spread rapidly, leaving residents horrified. Believing that only a deranged psychopath could commit such an act, the police reopened the investigation. They retraced the original tip-off and found witnesses who confirmed seeing a red Zaporozhets near the crime scene. Determined to find the killer, Vagin contacted his Belarusian counterparts. He knew that a serial killer had terrorized the Vitebsk region for years, committing dozens of similar murders between 1971 and 1985. The killer, Gennady Mikasevich, confessed to 30 murders, but was suspected of many more. Awaiting execution, Mikasevich had left a trail of destruction, with 14 innocent people already convicted for his crimes. Vagin faced a daunting task. Was Mikasevich truly guilty, or had the real killer moved to the Kursk region? His Belarusian colleagues were adamant. Mikasevich was the culprit, and his execution was imminent. With no other leads, the police began checking every red Zaporozhets in the area, knowing the killer might have come from anywhere, given the road's route to popular Crimean resorts. The search led them to one of their own, a police officer named Mikhail Likov, whose father owned a red Zaporozhets. The car's recently washed seat, covers, and traces of blood raised immediate suspicion. When questioned, Likov's father revealed that he hadn't driven the car recently. His son had. On the day of the murder, Mikhail Likov resumed duty from a leave, briefing his team and starting his shift. The investigation now pointed to Likov, a shocking twist that rocked the police force and the entire community. The call from the chief of criminal investigation came 15 minutes later. Within another 5 minutes, the chief of police and the public prosecutor entered Churilov's office. "Viktor Pavlovich, where's Likov?" asked the prosecutor. "He's just started his duty guarding the Central Market and the city trading base. Bring him here immediately." Viktor Pavlovich decided to personally escort Likov to the station. He couldn't fathom the idea that one of his officers might be involved in a heinous crime. Even if that turned out to be true, it was too risky to create a scene with an arrest. Michael Likov was brought to the District Police Department, ROVD. The prosecutor began the interrogation right away. When asked if he had seen the girl at the Bakansky turn, Likov confirmed and added, When the car's engine overheated and was cooling down, I saw a girl standing and then collapsing. I ran up to her, lifted her, and my hands were covered in blood. I put her in the car and drove, but she showed no signs of life. I checked her pulse, and that was it. Lykov insisted he got scared, worried he might be suspected of murder, and decided to dispose of the body, hiding it near the road. The prosecutor suggested they drive to the indicated location to verify his statements. Lykov readily agreed. As they approached the Sujansky turn, Lykov asked them to turn left. The investigators exchanged glances, realizing Lykov was not taking them to the right place. A few kilometers later, the suspect asked to stop the car. They crossed the road to the left side. In a grove about 20 meters from the road, Lykov pointed to the woman's body. Her legs were spread apart and her arms were thrown upwards. A forensic examination later revealed she had been raped post-mortem. The victim turned out to be the missing 20-year-old kindergarten teacher, Galina Kolosova. It had only been 2 days since her disappearance, so no one had reported her missing yet. When Galina's mother was informed of the tragedy, she nearly lost her sanity. She had recently buried her truck driver husband, who had fallen asleep at the wheel during a trip, and now her daughter had died just a week before her wedding. Michael Lykov adamantly denied raping Galina Kolosova, claiming it happened after he had left her by the road. He also denied any involvement in the murder of Lydia Alexieva. However, the experienced detectives knew they were dealing with a true monster in human form. Lykov stubbornly refused to admit his guilt, even when tests showed the victim's blood in his car. He concocted new stories, but the skilled investigator Nikolai Vagin managed to get Lykov to confess. Thus, the Ripper began to recount the horrifying tale of his crimes. One night, while on duty at the ROVD, a colleague celebrated a birthday. They decided to have a few drinks, about 100 grams of vodka, but they were hesitant to serve Lykov as he became quite aggressive when drunk. Still, it felt wrong not to invite a comrade to the table. After a few glasses, the conversation turned to Michael's wife, who was away in another city taking exams. Colleagues often teased the suspicious and jealous Lykov. The introverted man amusingly lost his temper whenever his wife was mentioned. She was studying in Kursk and was currently attending classes. His colleagues began to taunt him. "Are you sure she's in class? Maybe she's cheating on you?" The intoxicated Lykov snapped and decided to immediately check on his wife. He took his father's car, a Zaporozhets, and headed towards Kursk. After just 7-8 kilometers, the car's fan belt broke. He had to return, making frequent stops to prevent the engine from overheating. During one of these stops, Lykov saw Lydia Alexieva, whom he knew well due to a reputation as a promiscuous woman. The deranged, jealous man decided to take revenge on his supposedly unfaithful wife by seducing Alexieva. He began to proposition her, suggesting they go together and spend some time. She refused. Enraged, he grabbed a knife from his car and started stabbing her on the road. After killing her, he dragged her into a garden, raped her corpse, and desecrated the body by scattering her internal organs on the ground and hanging them on the fruit tree branches. Covered in blood, Lykov emerged onto the road and noticed a girl standing at a bus stop in the distance. It was Galina Kolosova, on her way home to help her mother prepare for her wedding. Fearing she might identify him, Lykov decided to eliminate the witness. At that moment, an unidentified passerby saw the scene and later called the police. The man thought Lykov had hit the girl with his car and was trying to flee the scene. He had no idea he had witnessed a brutal murder. To avoid drawing attention, Lykov decided to remove the body from the crime scene and hide it in a deserted area. A few minutes later, in a roadside forest, the frenzied Lykov violated the lifeless girl's body. But the killer in uniform didn't stop there. Not all the witnesses had been eliminated yet. Lykov decided to kill an elderly couple selling potatoes by the roadside because they had undoubtedly seen him. Fortunately for them, they managed to pack up and leave for home just in time. The officers at the district police department where Mikhail Lykov worked were in shock. No one could believe that their quiet, reserved colleague was capable of such brutality. They assumed he had lost his sanity. Lykov himself tried to convince the investigators of his insanity. His behavior in the detention center was erratic. He was kept in a cell alone, set fire to his mattress and clothes, walked around naked, smeared excrement, and urinated on himself. A forensic psychiatric examination was ordered. The doctors unequivocally found Mikhail Lykov to be fully sane. Soon after, the trial commenced. Witnesses at the trial particularly remembered the feverish gleam in the defendant's eyes. He behaved arrogantly and did everything he could to justify his actions, seeking some form of leniency. However, neither the judges nor the other participants in the trial could understand why he had committed such atrocities. The court found no mitigating circumstances in the case. Mikhail Lykov was sentenced to the highest penalty. Later, the Kursk Ripper submitted a plea for clemency, but it was dismissed without review. The sentence was carried out. To stay updated with new stories, subscribe to the channel, like and leave your comments. Your opinion is very important to me.